Now, this has been a topic all year long between who's going to make the playoffs between the Dolphins and Jets, and now it seems like neither team is going to make the playoffs. Both teams collapsed late in the season. I will say the Jets have a playoff win before the Dolphins, although we have the longest drought of any team that hasn't made the playoffs. But we did win a playoff game in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
The Dolphins have not won one, I think, in like 20 years. But we're talking about this season.
Mm-hmm.
Who had the bigger collapse? And Drew,
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know what side you're leaning on.
Okay.
But pardon me if I want to hear this answer from Dehls first.
Really?
Because I'm really intrigued with the answer you're going to give, Dehls.
I'll be honest. Whenever we have a show topic, I always give it the respect it needs, and I thoroughly think it out and say I'm going to have all of these points. With all the respect to the Dolphins, I don't really care about the Dolphins because I want to talk about the Jets. If you want just my quick answer, who had the bigger collapse? I don't know. The Jets or Dolphins, they both collapsed, I guess. If you want to, I would say the Jets had the bigger collapse because of my 0-5 rant over here. So I'll go with the Jets.
But the schedule that they had.
For sure. They didn't play the Niners and Chargers and all of these teams. But I want to talk about the Jets because there's something that Colin Cowherd says that always resonates with me. Fan is short for fanatic, right? Obviously something we all know, but something maybe we forget. And all of the overreactions that has been going on Jets Twitter and the Jets community and all over the internet has been baffling. Because just a couple weeks ago, Robert Saleh was a Coach of the Year candidate. And just a couple of weeks ago, Joe Douglas was looked at as one of the brightest GMs in all of the NFL. And the Jets had one of the brightest young cores with Sauce and Breeze coming back and AVT coming back and Garrett Wilson, 1,000-yard season, right? And after the Seahawks game, it's fire Robert Saleh. Joe Douglas, we got to take a hard look at him and all of the roster construction decisions he's made over the last couple of years in draft classes. Let's take a deep breath. Because it's very easy to overreact. We have overreaction Mondays, right? And all of this stuff that people go crazy over. You could say without a doubt the Jets collapsed. 5-game losing streak, might be 6 against Miami. You start off the season 7-4. Your expectations now change. Coming into the season, and it's cruel. It's cruel because coming into this year in the offseason in August, whenever we're doing these predictions, I said, I just want the Jets to be in the hunt. I want meaningful games in December. And they gave that to me. They gave me meaningful games in December. And these motherfuckers lost every game. That's what the Jets gave me. I got what I asked for. I said I want meaningful games in December. Unfortunately, not in this way. But to me, for this Jets offseason and going into the future, it's really simple. You need to improve at quarterback. Over these last 4 or 5 years, the Jets quarterback by passer rating. 2022, it was a 75, last in the NFL. 2021, it was 76, 28th in the NFL. 2020, it was 76, 30th in the NFL. 2019, it was 80, 27th in the NFL. 28, it was 73, 30th in the NFL. They have not had a quarterback throw for 10-plus touchdowns in that span. Brock Purdy has 10-plus touchdowns this year, Mr. Irrelevant, who started 5 games. That's how bad this Jets quarterback situation has been since 2017, since we drafted Mr. Sam Darnold over here. It's been a laughingstock. It's been the worst quarterback situation in the NFL without a doubt for 5 straight years.
Denver.
And no, Teddy Bridgewater would be our best quarterback over that stretch. It's not close.
It's mid.
Step back 3, Brock Osweiler probably better too.
Ugh, legend. Bronco legend. Dude, Teddy Bridgewater, he's not good.
Is he better than Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold?
All right.
Okay. So moving on. A lot of the holes that the Jets team has had this year has had some injuries in the offensive line. People point out safety and, maybe some wide receiver depth. Having an average quarterback on this team, we're locked into the playoffs. If we had an average quarterback, we could be sitting at 10 or 11 wins. Let's be honest with each other, because as much as we go back and forth with Mike White and Zach Wilson, the numbers this season were terrible. 27th in points per game, 29th in red zone offense, 28th in third down conversion. It didn't matter who was the quarterback. If it was Mike White, Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, could have been Josh Johnson, whatever. Sure, you could put up these numbers of these 300 passing yard games, but in critical situations, the Jets were not able to capitalize. And you could blame some of that on LaFleur. I do think he takes some of the blame. You should take a hard look at him this offseason, because the fact that he wasn't able to develop Zach at all, the fact that I agree, we see eye to eye in terms of he doesn't seem to play to Zach's strengths, get him on bootlegs, get him out of the pocket, get some easy throws to start off the game to get him in rhythm. 100% I agree. But I also have seen plenty of games and plenty of throws where players are wide open and he just misses him. So I don't want to put it just on the floor. I don't want to put it just on the quarterback. But without a doubt, they have to improve at quarterback this offseason. Because like I said, if we got even below average quarterback play, not the worst in the NFL, we're probably in the playoffs, right? If we had someone like Teddy Bridgewater, who would have played better than Zach Wilson and Mike White this season.
Teddy Bridgewater 2 years ago.
Yes, for sure. There's a decent chance we're in the playoffs sitting at 9-10 wins, or at the very, very, very minimum, have a playing game this upcoming week against Miami with Skylar Thompson or Mike Glennon starting. That's what the Jets need to do. They had a collapse. They had a huge collapse. And you could talk about the holes and, I can't believe Joe Douglas, he went out and signed Carl Lawson. He tore his Achilles. Oh, I can't believe he went out and paid George Fant. Who else do you want to play tackle? I can't believe he went out and signed Dwayne Brown. Well, Mekhi Becton's out for the season. What are you supposed to do? For all of these questions you guys have, and by you guys, not pick a side, but the Jets fans out there, what other choice do we have? Say, because Corey Davis gets a lot of shit. What if the Jets didn't sign a receiver that offseason? What if they signed Kenny Golladay instead? We would have been flaming Joe Douglas for not signing a wide receiver. It's very easy to look in hindsight and say, I can't believe he made X, Y, and Z move. But if he didn't make these moves, we would have been flaming him at that time. Everyone liked the Carl Lawson signing. Everyone liked the Corey Davis signing for $14, $15 million per year. Everyone was over the moon that we went and got Dwayne Brown out of retirement in the offseason and OTAs because of Mekhi Becton's injury. Oh, we're going all in. Everyone was so happy with the James Robinson move. Now at the end of the season, it's very easy to look at and say, I can't believe he made all of these mistakes. He did his best to fill the roles. I don't think you should be firing Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh. Now, if we're sitting here next season and the Jets have another collapse, if the Jets have 6 or 7 wins again, then we could have that discussion. We can have that argument. But I think it would be huge to bring in a quarterback. And it's also, you can't overlook, the Jets were 5-2 with Breece Hall. They were 2-7 without him. He was the home run hitter on this team. This was the way the offense was supposed to be run, with Breece Hall in the backfield, being a top 10 running back, and off of that, Zach Wilson being able to go off play action, have guys open in the flat over the middle of the field, open guys because the defense had to take into account Breece Hall's home run ability and just superstar ability that he was on a path to. It's not the same with Mike Carter and James Robinson, even Donovan Knight. So go out, get a quarterback. Don't be the worst quarterback team since 2018, and you're in the playoffs.
Would the Jets have made the playoffs with current Sam Darnold?
Current Sam Darnold's better than Zach, so probably.
I'm just asking. This version of Sam Darnold that we're seeing in Carolina, would the Jets have made the playoffs with him?
Probably.
This answer for me is very simple.
What about Geno Smith?
Yes.
The answer to this question is very simple for me. It's the Miami Dolphins. To start the season 3-0, to then go on a 3-game losing streak after Tua's unfortunate injury, and for him to come back and go on a 5-game heater where the offense was absolutely clicking, and by offense I mean the pass offense. 3 weeks in a row, Tua was at a passer rating over 130, the first time in NFL history. It just seemed like everything was going the right direction for Miami. Defense started to heat up. They acquired Bradley Chubb. They trade a first-round pick to my Broncos. Things are looking promising. And then they hit the Niners game. And then the Chargers. And then the Bills, where, hey, that was a good performance by the guys. Defense definitely let them down. And then the game against the Packers. This was a team that had expectations going into this season. The Jets, with all due respect, and I do mean this with all due respect, there was not the expectations that Miami had. It's just that simple. Acquiring Tyreek Hill. Mike McDaniel comes in. He's supposed to change the tone in the locker room. He did. He did. You guys were early to the process. This defense was not supposed to be elite this soon. It definitely was in the cards, but it wasn't supposed to be this level. Breece Hall wasn't supposed to come in and be a top 10 back off rip. That wasn't supposed to happen. What was supposed to happen was Zach Wilson was supposed to progress. That didn't happen. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be just.
He did progress.
I'm not saying I'm saying the situation.
It really is unfortunate.
He did progress. Just
he regressed. He regressed.
His all his pass stats are better from last year.
What?
his passing stats this year are better from last year.
Is his completion percentage?
I'll just finish before this becomes a whole Jets
It's a
thing.
little- it's
Hey,
lower.
guys.
But he did
Come
improve,
on,
just
come
not
on.
where
I'm
we thought he was
talking.
gonna
I'm
be.
talking here. Why it's more disappointing is because people really believed in Miami. At one point, they were a top 4 team in the AFC. People had them be going to the Super Bowl. Listen, I'm a Miami guy. I never got onto that. I never went to that far, but hey, they were definitely a
close.
dark horse. I was. I said that game against the Niners was going to be my deciding factor whether I was all in or not. And from then, it's just been a downward spiral. And it all comes down to expectations for me. There was a lot of expectations on Miami, a lot of expectations that I put on Miami as well. The Jets, with all due respect, didn't have that same expectation.
I didn't have the Dolphins making the playoffs in the offseason. I knew that the truth was eventually going to come out on the quarterback's play. He did have a phenomenal start, though. One of the worst quarterbacks since Week 13. Only above Mike White and very slightly. I think it's the Jets. I think they had the bigger collapse. And the reasoning for that has some to do with how the season ended. But it has a lot to do with just the positioning of these teams, quite frankly. I mean, when we talk about the Dolphins, just first off, right? The Dolphins, yeah, they might not make the playoffs, but, there's excuses. Oh, Tua did not play the last 2 games. Tua missed more than half of the Bengals game. He, I think, didn't play for 2 weeks after that.
Yep.
I mean, Tua missed games. I am pretty sure if he plays some of those games, like if he played the game versus Minnesota,
That's a fact.
the Dolphins probably win. It's a toss-up. But you could have won that game. You could have got into the playoffs. So the Dolphins, even though I don't think Tua is the greatest quarterback, I think they have a quarterback that they think they can win with, and I think you can win with Tua. They have a left tackle. They have corner. They have 2 elite wide receivers. They have a nice defensive front. They have 2 phenomenal edge rushers. The Dolphins are just a couple moves away from being in a great position next year. You know what it is about the Jets? Jets fans ask for something, and they think what they're asking for is going to be the saving grace. They now get it, and they realize it wasn't what they expected. That was the Mike White situation. For all the shit we give Zach, you came on here and said 0-5. If we got Mike White at quarterback, that's not happening. Zach lost 2 of those games, but Zach in the Detroit game played better than any game Mike White played outside of the Bears game. The Bears game was...
And Minnesota.
Minnesota was better.
I don't know about that. He didn't score a touchdown.
Can you stop though?
He didn't score.
He had a rushing
You
touchdown.
know.
He had 2 interceptions.
He had a rushing touchdown.
You know.
Barely. It was like 4th down. The entire team had to push him in.
You
What are
know
you talking about?
that Barrios dropped that ball.
And he also threw an interception on the very next drive.
It happens.
There are people
It was
that
4th and 10.
there are people
with
that
20
had,
seconds
okay,
left.
and Zach Wilson made 2 big time throws in the
And
fourth
he had
quarter.
5 or
last drive.
6 turnover worthy plays.
Oh yeah,
bro.
but he put us in a position to
his
tie the game
his
and go into
off-target
overtime.
rate was higher than
It was
the
3
against
one of the
interceptions.
worst secondaries in the game. Yes, it'd
The
been
Vikings
better.
are worse.
Okay,
They're both bottom
They're
of the
bad.
barrel.
They're
The Vikings
bad.
are worse.
But at least
The
Mike
secondary's
White.
worse.
But Mike White played better.
It's not. It's really not close.
All right. You might not think it's close, but all these advanced stats, DVOA, EPA, whatever you want to use, Zach was better. I have those stats to back it up.
Can we just stop with that though?
I'm not going to get into
Thank
the
you.
nitty-gritty
I'm
of
with
it,
you. I
but
agree.
I'm just
Let's not
saying,
do that.
Jets fans turned on this kid
They
in
did.
2 weeks.
They did. It was gross.
6-3.
It was gross.
6-3 at the bye week. He had just beaten the 6-1 Bills. He played a good game, and then the Patriots game happened. Really, the 2 Patriot games are the reason why the entire fan base hates Zach Wilson now. The Jets reports about them keeping Zach Wilson. Every Jets fan is distraught now. They're in hell that Zach might be back next year. I mean, they totally gave up on this guy. And they wanted Zach Wilson to get benched from Mike White because they thought he gave them a better chance to make the playoffs. Mike White's won 1 game against Trevor Siemian. What are we talking about here? All the games y'all thought he was going to possibly win, he ain't show up for. Minnesota, okay, you want to give him that? Okay, whatever.
So
He
what?
just-
So
he
we're
got
talking
it.
about
He
just
played
the
well.
Seattle game.
We're talking Seattle. He was awful.
He was
No,
horrible.
he was.
He was
He
awful.
was without a doubt
He was-
terrible.
Oh my God, it was bad.
But I mean,
Oh my God.
we just see it like he's gonna have a Zach agenda. I'm gonna have a Mike White.
Wasn't great against the Bills.
No, but again, he got hurt in what the
Nah,
second
facts.
quarter.
It's
No,
just
yeah.
if
He
you
showed
look-
resiliency.
If you look at the games, just not the Bears game, the Vikings, Bills, and Seahawks game, Mike White, 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 55% completion percentage, 62.2 passer rating. Look at Zach Wilson, what he finished the season with passer rating, and this year is higher than that, but they wanted Mike White, and it's whatever. They wanted what they got, and they realized it wasn't what they got. And as a Jets fan, I can understand trends. Robert Saleh is a defensive-minded coach. He turned around the defense, no doubt. He mishandled the quarterback situation. He mishandled the quarterback development by not getting a better quarterback coach. I mean, the quarterback coach, this is his first time doing it. So that right there is a red flag. Versus Detroit, we saw his poor clock management in a tight game where you need to be perfect on managing the clock. He was absolutely horrendous in that situation versus Detroit. And ultimately, you look at the division we're in, Mike McDaniel's better. Sean McDermott's
absolutely.
better.
And Belichick.
Belichick is better. He's the worst coach in our division. And defensive coaches historically are not as successful as offensive coaches. They're just not. So I'm not saying fire Robert Saleh, but I'm also not backing him 100%. I think our roster is in a good place. But here's what's going to happen. And it sucks I'm going to say this, but it's going to be the truth. And we're going to look back at this a year from now and be like, wow, Joel was really right. It's because I know my Jets. We're going to get everything we wanted this offseason, whether it's Derek Carr or one of these other
manifested.
One of these other middle of the pack quarterbacks.
No, manifested.
Right?
Middle of the pack.
Lamar's coming to town.
Lamar's not going to be a Jet.
Just manifest.
He's not going to be a Jet.
Yeah, you're right. Now it's locked. He's not coming.
He's not. I mean, it's so unlikely.
Remember when they said Russell was never going to come to Denver?
They traded him.
You manifest.
Listen, the Jets are going to get one of these quarterbacks, and next year, you saw the schedule was released. I mean, we see our home opponents.
It's scary.
It's a gauntlet. Derek Carr is not going to lead us to the playoffs anyway, or whoever we get, and we're going to be like, wow. It's just the Jets. I don't trust the Jets, bro. Just the Jets. I just know how this is going to go down. I don't have any expectations.
The only thing I'll say is
I don't trust their staff.
Coming into this season, we looked at our schedule and said the same thing. We said, "Oh my God, look at this gauntlet we have to go through."
We were in the hunt.
I agree, but regardless, yes, next season we have. I think KC
I thought a lot of
Chargers.
analysts on TV picked the Jets to be good this season. I do.
There
Robert
was
Griffin had us
some.
at 10 wins.
I had them winning 6 games.
Yeah, there was some, but there was definitely also people like Brady Quinn who had us at fucking 0-9
That's an
bye week.
extreme.
No, I know, but
I thought you guys would go 0-8 to start. Like there was a strong chance that would happen. I was wrong.
because coming into the year, like you had Baltimore, the Bengals, Miami revamped. You were at Green Bay. You were at the Broncos. Like you played the Bills and Patriots 3 times within 3 weeks. Like so, coming into the year, we also had the same expectation, but this this upcoming schedule, I do think looks a little bit rougher with KC and Philly, who are basically locked to be great teams next year, barring an injury to their quarterback. Like, they're going to be great. But I do think bringing in, whether it's Jimmy G or Derek Carr, the fact that we got 7 wins with the worst quarterback play in the NFL speaks volumes to this roster and the talent on defense and the weapons on the offense side of the ball too, especially when Breece Hall was there. 5-2 with Breece Hall. Now, obviously, I'm not a guy who believes that you should build your team around running backs or anything like that. But as you said earlier in the show, just a marginal quarterback upgrade is really a huge quarterback upgrade. And the Jets are going to go from not a marginal upgrade. The Jets are probably going to have a gigantic upgrade at quarterback, going from 32nd to, even if it's Jimmy G, 18th, or Derek Carr, 14th. That's a substantial upgrade. The biggest question for the Jets for me this offseason outside of quarterback is, what do you do with LaFleur? Robert Saleh is someone who is extremely loyal. He's someone who I think is going to give LaFleur another season. And I do see both sides to it because the lack of development with Zach is concerning. But as I said previously in my opening monologue, I did see plenty of opportunity for passes to be completed and red zone opportunities to be there. So I wouldn't be opposed to having an average quarterback run this system for 1 year and see where it goes. Because let's be honest, the Jets don't make the playoffs next year, you probably clean house. Maybe Douglas stays. If he has a really good draft class this year, I could see Douglas staying. But if he has a terrible draft class like his first one with Becton and Mims and all of these guys, you could see him being let go, which I would probably be opposed to because I think he's really built a good roster.
Great draft this
but,
last time.
people are going to be talking about that.
The first 2 drafts, Douglas hasn't hit.
Yeah, I mean, AVT is a Pro Bowl level player. I think Elijah Moore showed flashes. Just
He's
with a good quarterback, he can
Elijah's
be good.
whatever.
I'm not saying anything more.
I think Elijah Moore
he
could
can
be a
good.
1,000-yard receiver with Derek Carr. If he's the number 2 receiver.
That's not, but like you're laughing, but that's
No,
not an
crazy,
insane
bro.
statement.
That's crazy.
Did you forget his rookie year?
That's crazy. I really don't think Elijah Moore is.
What do you think Elijah Moore would have with Daniel Jones?
Oh my God.
I really don't know.
I would love
not in a
to
1,000-yard
see that.
I don't think Elijah Moore is what you think.
Again,
he is, bro.
he's making
But I'm not-
people like Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins
I'm not about to
notable.
Argue. I'm not about to argue over Elijah Moore being a 1,000-yard receiver. I really don't care about him being. I don't care. I think he's average. I think he's
Okay.
average.
I mean, he could have a 1,000-yard receiver. Doesn't make you a top 10 receiver. That you're
Makes
like
you
a top
good to-
25.
makes you a good to great
that
one,
makes
though.
you a top 25 receiver.
He's not a top 25 receiver.
He can't have a top 25 season with Derek Carr.
Not even close to a top 25 receiver.
He is not close to being a top 25 receiver. No.
Yes,
And
but
I wouldn't
1,000-yard
even
season-
say that makes you a lock, because when we did our wide receiver list, we went into the season with guys like Adam Thielen.
He's not
Tyler
better than
Lockett.
KJ Osborne, in my opinion.
I disagree with that one.
KJ Osborne,
He's not bad. He's not bad. No,
better.
KJ Osborne
But
can
that's the tier
play.
he's in.
But I will say this: we saw one game, which obviously was against the Bears, I believe. And Elijah Moore had his best game of the season when he had a quarterback that was actually willing to throw the ball to him.
That was one game.
It was one game, absolutely. But then last season, we saw it. Joe Flacco and Elijah Moore had some great chemistry. Then Elijah Moore, unfortunately, goes down with injury. But there was a lot of hype around Elijah Moore and his name and what he meant to the wide receiving core of the New York Jets.
Just a little Elijah Moore versus KJ Osborne. So Elijah Moore has played in 26 games and has 970 yards. KJ Osborne has played in 42 games and has 1,200 yards. So with 16 more games, he has 200 something more yards than him.
You want to look at snap counts instead of just games played.
Sure. I mean, he's been the wide receiver 3 there for however long, and they run a lot of wide receiver 3 sets.
I mean,
I
snap
don't
count
have it
matters.
here. No,
The
for sure
games
it
is
does.
not what really matters. It's
But-
snap count.
Okay, so in 2021, KJ Osborne played 68% of snaps. In 2022, 75%.
The number, like the number of snaps.
Okay, 774 snaps in 2021. Are you writing this down? I don't remember this.
I remember. Yeah.
774 snaps in 2021, 818 in 2022. That's for KJ Osborne. And then for Mr. Elijah, it was 476 snaps, so half, maybe a little less, and about 700 this year. So
this year they're at the
200-ish,
same.
yes?
So this year they're at the same.
No, he has over 100 less snaps.
Okay, it's similar though. 700, 800, and KJ Osborne has more yards than Elijah Moore.
Yeah, I mean marginally.
Oh, now it's
He
more,
has-
now
I mean,
he
No,
he
it
has-
is. No, he has 200. What? It's like 250, 260?
Yeah, it's
Off the top of my head from what I'm remembering. But the amount of games played is significant. And that first year from 700 to...
I mean, KJ's played 16 more
Yeah,
games.
I mean-
What are we talking about here? He's played a full season worth more of games and has 200 more yards than him.
He's finally getting an opportunity. Last year, Elijah Moore was a
No,
wide
listen,
receiver one
and
for
credit
majority of the year.
credit to KJ. He's definitely seized his opportunity so far towards the back half of the season. But again, last season, Elijah Moore showed flashes of being special.
For sure.
Like I said, bro, I don't care about Elijah Moore. I'm not going to.
And he might not even be on the team. So at the end of the day, like it
Bring
might,
it
it
down.
might
All in
be
all,
mute.
The Jets had a bigger collapse. The Jets ruined their young quarterback's development to start a journeyman quarterback to just miss the playoffs.
I just see the opposite.
Whether you go into the moments and you pick apart those decisions in hindsight, looking at what happened, the final result, that's what the Jets did. That's what the Jets did.
If Zach Wilson would have continued to throw for a 55% completion percentage, less than 200 yards per game,
That's what Mike White
and
did.
have more turnovers than touchdowns, would that have been the right move and lost?
Mike White had 0 touchdowns to 4 interceptions.
Zach Wilson couldn't move the ball on offense.
It looked better than what anything Mike White did with Seattle.
Against Seattle, it's
Against-
tough also
yes.
because you guys were at Seattle as well, one of the tougher
listen,
environments.
55% completion percentage.
No,
I mean,
he was
listen,
he was horrible.
I mean,
he was
listen,
horrible.
If,
Like,
if
look,
Zach
look,
Wilson
look,
was
I'm
coming
not-
off cracked
look,
ribs,
I
would he
really-
not have every excuse in the book for him?
Look,
for
I
sure.
really
Like,
don't care about this Mike White, Zach Wilson thing.
Neither do I.
We can acknowledge they're both bad quarterbacks.
I agree.
Like, just because
I would-
I'm just saying, would you
Who'd you rather have
Last
start?
year, when we asked you who'd you rather
I have an
start,
answer.
Teddy or Drew Lock, even though you knew Teddy was better, you'd rather Drew Lock. I'd rather finish the season
I'm
out
not
with
disagreeing.
Zach.
Listen,
That's it.
I always agreed with that statement.
That's it.
Mike White, for the fact that you guys had playoff aspirations since he was playing better than Zach Wilson, I understood wanting to see Mike White in there. But I always am on the side of you drafted this guy with. You couldn't draft him higher unless you had the number 1 overall pick. You drafted him over Justin Fields, Mac Jones. I understand Trey Lance is hurt, but you drafted him over Trey Lance. You definitely believed in this guy. To go into and select a journeyman over your number 2 guy instead of developing him and trusting him through thick and thin, that's where I do have a hard time sitting with it.
Is it fair for me to just discount the Bears game and just be like, whatever, like, who cares?
It's crazy because here I am, really on his side here, and he goes and throws a crazy statement like that. Like, it was your best performance of the year.
I think people forget how bad that New England game was. Zach Wilson completed 41% of his passes for
horrible.
77 yards.
It was horrendous.
It was horrible.
And then Mike White goes and has a great game against Chicago.
Which was a bounce.
He had a solid game against Minnesota.
I agree. And Zach Wilson had an opportunity against Detroit to really go out, and the yards might be there.
He
like
gave us
he had
the
300
lead with
yards.
4 minutes left.